Full spoilers for Spider-Man Brand New Day. Haven't seen it? Go now. Peter Parker invents the mutant power suppressor in this movie, and then he hands it to the people who hunt mutants. I don't mean that as a metaphor. He builds a chip that shuts off superpowers. Then he builds a universal version that works on anybody. Then he puts it on Jean Grey's neck and delivers her to damage control with it still attached. Bruce Banner literally warns him, asks him how he decides which parts of nature are good or bad, and Peter does it anyway. In the comics, that same technology, power-dampening collars, is what enslaves mutant kind in the most famous dystopia the X-Men have. And nobody in this film, including Peter, ever mentions it again. So these are 9 things I could not find assembled in a single other video, including the reason every possession in this film is heartbreaking, a background prop that's secretly the whole character arc, and a post-credit scene that doesn't work. Unless you realize who actually sent the message. One quick note before we start. I'm gonna call Jean a mutant. The film never actually uses that word, not once. I'm using the comics term, so this makes sense. The movie just calls her special. More on why that matters in the next video. Let's go. Start with the one from the cold open, because it's the biggest. Peter's arachnid DNA starts overtaking his human DNA. He goes to Bruce Banner, who's a physics professor at Empire State University in this film, wearing a wrist-mounted gamma inhibitor to keep the Hulk down, and asks how to suppress it. Banner helps, but he asks Peter a question that the film never resolves. How do you decide what part of nature is good or bad? He specifically warns that suppressing DNA universally is unnatural. Peter builds it anyway. First, a personal chip, mounted on the back of his neck, by the way, exactly like Doc Ock's control chip. Then, he builds a universal inhibitor, one that works on anyone. He builds it to stop Jean Grey. And he uses it. He puts it on the back of Jean Grey's neck, and then he hands her over to damage control. And now, follow the chip. This is the part nobody traces. Jean goes into Metzger's custody at Roosevelt Island with Peter's universal inhibitor still on her. It stays on her while they run experiments on her. It only comes off at the very end, when Jean's own power overloads it and it breaks off. So the device didn't get stolen, it didn't get left behind. Peter physically delivered a working universal power suppressor into the hands of an organization that was already trying to weaponize mutant abilities, and it sat in their building on their prisoner for days. Now, Damage Control's entire function is detaining people with powers. We've watched them do it since Ms. Marvel. In this film, they killed a child trying to replicate her abilities. And Peter Parker just handed them a working device that switches superpowers off, attached to the mutant they wanted.
In Days of Future Past, the comic, 1981, surviving mutants are herded into internment camps and kept enslaved by power-dampening collars. Kitty Pryde's whole escape is smuggling in a device to switch her collar off. Same idea, same function. The single most famous dystopia in X-Men history runs on the device Peter Parker just invented. Being precise, the collars are Sentinel tech in that story, not damage controls. I'm not saying this film is adapting Days of Future Past. I'm saying the MCU just put the key ingredient on the table and handed it to the people building the cages. Peter didn't just fail to stop damage control, he gave them the prototype, working on a live subject. And here's the detail that makes this so much worse, and I only found this after the film came out. Look closely at Banner's inhibitor, the wrist device that keeps the Hulk down. It has a Stark Industries logo on it. So the foundation of Peter's chip is Stark Tech, the same tech Banner has been wearing for years. And remember who else Tony Stark founded? Damage Control. To be straight with you, the film never shows Metzger's people copying it, and Metzger escapes before anyone confirms he took anything. That part is my read. But these are people who reverse-engineered Stark drones and built anti-Spider-Man weapons before Peter ever walked in. And Peter handed them the device on a plate. And here's what makes it land. The film knows. That's why Banner asks the question. It's planted and then deliberately never paid off. That's not a plot hole. That's a tragedy nobody's naming.
Number 2. And it makes number 1 worse. The Department of Damage Control was set up after the Battle of New York in 2012 as a joint venture between the US government and Tony Stark to clean up after superhero fights and contain alien tech. Genuinely good intentions. We see it first in Spider-Man Homecoming, and here's the bit that makes this whole thing rhyme. The very first thing Damage Control does on screen is put Adrian Toomes out of work. Tony's cleanup agency created the Vulture. Peter's first villain exists because of it. Now watch where it goes from there. In Ms. Marvel, they hunted Kamala Khan, a teenager, with Stark combat drones and Stark sonic cannons. Salvaged Stark tech turned on a kid. And in this film, they kidnapped 2 sisters, experimented on both, and killed one of them. So think about what this movie is actually doing to Peter Parker. His dead father figure built the organization that's now hunting kids like him. It created his first villain. It hunted Kamala, and now it's killed a girl. Peter never finds out. Nobody says it out loud, but it's the exact same slow corruption the MCU has been showing us since 2017. And this is the film where it kills someone. Tony built it to fix damage. It became the damage. And in this same movie, Peter hands that same organization a device that switches powers off, with a mutant already wearing it.
Number 4. Peter has a police contact in this film, Detective Jean DeWolff, played by Liza Colon-Zayas. She feeds him information. Genuinely useful. It's basically Gordon and Batman, and it's one of the nicest new dynamics in the movie. Here's what she is in the comics. There's a 1985 storyline called The Death of Jean DeWolff. She's murdered by a serial killer called the Sin Eater, and a reporter, Eddie Brock, publishes an expose naming the killer. He interviews a man who confesses, he runs the story, his career is made. Except the man who confessed, Emil Greg, was a compulsive confessor, a copycat. And Spider-Man catches the real Sin Eater, who turns out to be Stan Carter, the police sergeant investigating the case, DeWolff's own former lover. Brock's story is recalled, he's fired, his wife leaves him, and here's the twisted part. Brock doesn't blame Greg.
He blames Spider-Man, the guy who caught the real killer and exposed his story as wrong. That very specific, very personal hatred is exactly why the symbiote chooses him. One flag for accuracy. This Brock connection was added later in Amazing Spider-Man number 300 in 1988. It's a retcon onto the 1985 story, but it is canon and it is Venom's origin. Marvel did not put Jean DeWolff in this movie as a cute nod. They planted the first domino of Venom's origin, and they gave it a face you'll be sad to lose first. Everybody was watching for a black suit in this film. The actual Venom setup was the cop giving Peter tip-offs. And to be fair, I'll flag it, Marvel could just like the character. She's a good Spider-Man supporting player, and she works fine on her own. But you don't cast Jean DeWolff and give her a friendly working relationship with Peter unless you understand what that name means.
Number 5, and it goes straight on top of number 4. When Peter fights his way into the damage control facility, he discovers something that genuinely rattles him. They built weapons designed specifically to defeat him, weapons that destroy his webbing mid-air. They were always ready for Spider-Man. And here's the part that's actually an Easter egg. Those weapons are built on Shocker's arm technology. Herman Schultz, Vulture's crew, Spider-Man Homecoming, Damage Control confiscated Shocker's gauntlets 9 years ago and turned them into anti-Spider-Man ordnance. They're not sci-fi gadgets. They're Peter's own rogues gallery, repurposed by the government. And they're being fired by the Hand, the ninja cult from Daredevil, who Damage Control hired as security. Now here's where I want to be careful with you, because I've seen people overstate this.
Shocker's tech is vibration-based, and vibration and sound are the symbiote's single greatest weakness in the comics. So line it up. This film gives us Jean DeWolff, whose comic death creates Venom, and an agency stockpiling vibration weapons, the exact thing that hurts Venom. Now, I want to be honest, the film never calls them sonic weapons, and it never mentions symbiotes. I've seen that overstated. But the pieces are on the board. They just didn't put a symbiote on it yet. And there's a kicker. The weapons only work on Peter's synthetic webbing. The moment he goes organic, they're useless. Damage Control spent years preparing for the wrong Spider-Man.
And one more thing, because I only caught this on a rewatch. Look at Aunt May's headstone. The epitaph reads, "When you help someone, you help everyone." That's the line the entire climax runs on. Peter helps one grieving girl, and Jean turns around and keeps him alive on an operating table. The movie tells you its own thesis on a gravestone in Act 1, and it never says it out loud again. Number 8, and this is the one I want you to argue with me about. The post-credits scene. Ned's Spidey tracker. Then the app announces, new Spider-Man sighting. Location unknown. The map pulls back. Past New York, past Earth, past the moon. A glitch, and a new pin appears in the stars. Location found. And here's the detail that changes everything, and I've only seen this pointed out in the last day or so. The Queen's pin never disappears. Watch it again. Peter's icon stays on Earth. The app doesn't move him. It says new Spider-Man sighting and adds a second pin. That's 2 Spider-Men on screen at the same time, which honestly weakens the theory I was going to give you, so let me give you both and you tell me. And this is established in the film itself. The Spidey tracker is crowdsourced. Ned built it at MIT. It doesn't have a GPS chip on Spider-Man. It doesn't scan for him. People report sightings. The public submits them, and the app plots the pins. That's the entire mechanic. Frank uses it in the film. The movie shows you exactly how it works. And Ned didn't build it to unmask anybody. He built it to find Spider-Man and say thank you.
So who reported a Spider-Man sighting in deep space? It isn't Peter at all. Peter's still in Queens. That's why his pin doesn't move. The app found a different Spider-Man, one who just showed up somewhere he shouldn't exist. And that's an incursion. Two universes starting to overlap, which is exactly what Doomsday is about.
One more, because people are already arguing about it, and I think there's an answer. In the climax, to reach Jean, Peter takes his mask off and declares himself both Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And he does it in a room full of people. Damage control staff, they're scientists, including Bill Metzger. And then the film just moves on. Metzger escapes knowing exactly who Spider-Man is, and it's never mentioned again. Which is strange, because the film is careful about this everywhere else. Frank carries an unmasked Peter into a hospital and tells him, "I got you covered." And at the end, Frank puts the Spider-Man mask on himself and waves from the hospital window so Peter can walk out through the crowd in plain clothes unrecognized. The movie spends a whole sequence protecting his face, and then it drops this. Plenty of people are calling that a plot hole. I don't think it is. I think Jean fixed it. Think about what she'd already done moments before.
She froze everyone within a kilometer. Damage control's guards, the Hand, Metzger, all at once, all held in place by her. She was inside that entire building. This is a woman who spent the entire film entering minds, editing what people do, and leaving them with no memory of it. We know that for a fact. MJ says so. I don't remember being possessed. She has on screen the exact ability required to clean up that room. And by that point in the film, she has every reason to protect him. He gave her Aunt May. She gave him his life back twice. Once by literally keeping him alive with her powers until he woke from the coma. And once, maybe, by making sure nobody remembered his face.
3 questions. 1. The Spidey tracker. It's crowdsourced, so who reported him in space? I think it's Peter. If you got a better answer, I want it. 2. The inhibitor chip. Peter built a working power suppressor on Stark Tech and then handed it to an agency that detains powered people, with a mutant still wearing it. Is he responsible for what they do with it? 3. Metzger saw his face. Did Jean wipe it? Or did the film just forget? Next video, the full Easter egg breakdown. Over 40, including 6 recreated comic covers when most breakdowns are saying 3. The reason Peter's fake name at the party is heartbreaking, and the fact that this movie never once says the word mutant. See you in the next one.